guys, Samuel Allred here. Welcome back to the Persistence Outdoors podcast. When I was a kid, I was in Boy Scouts. I had a great troop. People's experience in Boy Scouts varies. I think it's largely dependent on troop dynamics. But my troop was super active, had lots of dads involved, and with this group of men and boys, I would go on 7 to 10 outdoor recreation trips in a year. We'd usually schedule monthly trips throughout the school year. Then there would be Boy Scout camp, and also in the summer, we would do a week-long backpacking or expedition style trip. And those were my favorite. I got to visit some incredible natural places throughout the Northwest, and it was always the highlight of my summer if I got to go. One of the things that was drilled into my head during my time in Boy Scouts was be prepared. That's the Boy Scout motto, and it really left an impression on me, especially with regards to the outdoors. If you set out to be prepared, it demands that you think ahead about possible scenarios and how to address them. This was particularly important as I got older and was eventually the youth leader of the troop. At that point, I couldn't just be prepared for myself, I was also responsible for others. Now, it's easy to go out on a hunt and not be prepared. And it probably depends on your personality, right? Are you an overthinker or are you more spontaneous? Whether by nature or by nurture, I tend to fall more on the side of overthinking things. But it occurred to me while prepping for this podcast, even if you make an effort to be prepared, you just don't know what you don't know. Maybe you've never experienced really bad blisters, or maybe you've never truly been out of cell service and needed to follow a paper map. Whatever it is, it can be challenging to be truly prepared when you just don't have the experience. That's where the 10 essentials come in. And this is our topic for today. The 10 essentials are items that you should consider packing on any hunt or trip in the outdoors. The items on this list will help you stay safe and even keep you alive in a worst-case scenario. The 10 essentials list was developed in the 1930s by the Mountaineers, a Seattle-based outdoor recreation and education group. Over the years, this list has been tested and refined and formalized, and now you'll see it recommended all over, particularly for backpacking. It's a good idea to check this list and adapt it to any hunt or outdoor adventure you go on. Especially if you're new to hunting or hiking or camping, packing the items on this list can give you the confidence that you are, at least materially, well prepared for anything nature throws your way. So that's what we're going to talk about today. Before we get into it, if you like this podcast, if you want to support it, please give it a 5-star rating on whatever platform you listen on. It will help the show grow and reach more people, and I really appreciate your support. So what's on this magical list? There's no hard and fast order, but here are the items in categories: a first aid kit, a headlamp, a navigation system, a knife, fire starters, sun protection, emergency shelter, extra water, extra clothing, and extra food. So again, they're in no particular order. At first, I tried to rank them from most important to least, and I just couldn't do it because they're all fundamental. So we'll start with one that I think is often overlooked: your first aid kit. First aid kits are so important. Hunting includes some inherent risk. You're dealing with guns, you're dealing with knives, and maybe more dangerous than either of those, you're often going places where other people don't go. You're trying to find animals, you're getting off the beaten path, and so you're not around people. If you hurt yourself, you're on your own, so you need to have a first aid kit. I view packing a first aid kit as taking responsibility for myself and for the people around me. If you're hunting with friends and they all think you have a first aid kit, but you don't, or you think they do, vice versa, you're not in much better of a situation than if you were solo hunting. If you're 5 miles in the backcountry, someone gets a major cut, what are you going to do? So you need to pack a first aid kit. Now, realistically, you're going to go on a lot of hunts and not have any safety issues at all. And that's great. That's our goal, obviously. But let's talk about some of the things that can happen and what you might put in your first aid kit to address these issues. The most common things that are going to happen when you're hiking or hunting or backpacking are minor cuts, burns, and scrapes. When you nick yourself with your knife, when you're cooking and you burn yourself on your pot, whatever it is, most of these can be addressed with some Band-Aids and antibiotic ointment. Super simple. You don't need to go overboard with these, but these are the most common issues. You might also get blisters, so having some moleskin in your first aid kit is a good idea. You can make a little moleskin donut and put that around the blister, and it helps relieve some of the pain and allows you to keep hiking and getting where you need to go, even with that blister. Stepping up a bit, we have major cuts. When you're breaking down an animal, it is easy to cut yourself if you're not being careful, and we're using very sharp knives. I've heard stories of people who have cut themselves and not even noticed because their knife was so sharp until they look down and they're bleeding. So bring some gauze pads, bring some medical tape, some steri strips or butterfly bandages, and then also super glue. Super glue can be great for quickly sealing a wound and helping it stay together and not get infected. You may also encounter sprains or broken bones in the backcountry. One helpful tool to address this is a SAM splint. It's this flexible piece of material. I think it might have some aluminum in the middle of it that you can unroll and shape into a splint very easily. It will take up some space in your pack, but it's so much easier to secure than a couple sticks you find or something like that. So it may be worth it. Of course, we can't ignore that we are using guns. And in the case of an accidental discharge or some terrible accident, we do want to have a tourniquet. If you get shot in a limb, a tourniquet is going to be the best way to increase your chances of survival. You may also consider bringing a chest seal if you kind of understand how to use that. There's lots of debate on whether chest seals are helpful or not, but a tourniquet for sure is something that you should have in your first aid kit. And you don't need to go overboard with this. You don't need 7 tourniquets, right? But a tourniquet is a good idea, and preferably get one that you can apply yourself and tighten yourself. So in that worst case scenario, you could apply it and get out of there alive. Another thing that could be life-threatening are insect bites and stings. Last summer, I was hiking with my brother and we were just bushwhacking up this hillside, and I'm the type of person who gets stung by bees all the time. I've been stung by bees and hornets and wasps over 25 times in my life. My brother, on the other hand, has never been stung. He doesn't even know what it feels like, which is wild to me. But we're hiking through the brush, and all of a sudden, I feel a sting. And it's a bad sting. It feels very uncomfortable. So I yelp. I say, I just got stung. And we start rushing, trying to get away from whatever we've just disturbed. Well, what we had disturbed were bald-faced hornets, and these are some particularly nasty little insects, shall we say. And they tracked me and kept stinging me for the next 6 minutes. So over the next 6 minutes, I was stung 4 more times on different parts of my body. Ironically, during this whole time, my brother, who was right there with me, wasn't stung. So it was a frantic scene as we're running through thick brush, trying to get away from these bees. They're tracking me and stinging me, and it was really uncomfortable. I had never had major issues with swelling in the past, but these stings, for whatever reason, swelled up. So I had a sting on one of my forearms, and my forearm was swollen for something like a week after getting stung. That was a big reality check for me because I realized I didn't have any Benadryl in my first aid kit. And I was just thinking about being 4 or 5 miles in, bear hunting in a late bear season and running into that same scenario. And say I got stung on the neck or on the face, I would be in real big trouble not being able to breathe. And it could kill me. So that was something I quickly added to my first aid kit, some Benadryl. And if you have particular allergies or issues like that, you need to think about that and put that in your first aid kit. It might be an EpiPen, it might just be some Benadryl, it might just be some ointment or something to help with the pain. The very best resource I've found for assembling a first aid kit is on the Mountain Tough website. That's MTN Tough. And it's called Building a Hunting First Aid Kit, a Medical Perspective. You need to be careful when you buy a first aid kit from a store because often it doesn't have anything like a tourniquet or butterfly bandages in it. It might just be full of Band-Aids. So open it up and make sure that you have the things that you actually need in it. And if you don't know what you need, go reference that article on the Mountain Tough website, and it will give you a very good breakdown of all the items you should include in your kit. All right, moving on. The next essential is a headlamp. Headlamps are helpful in so many scenarios, and they're great to have when you're hiking or backpacking, but hunters need headlamps even more. Hunters spend a lot of time in the dark, whether you're hiking into your stand before sunrise or you're hiking back from your glassing point after sundown. Hunters will spend lots of time in the dark, and you need a headlamp. I would recommend a headlamp instead of a flashlight so you can have your hands free while you're using it. And one thing to remember is to bring extra batteries. Your headlamp could turn on in your pack on accident, or you might be out there longer than you think, or you might just not know how much charge you have left in those batteries. So always bring a change of batteries with your headlamp. If you're looking to buy a headlamp for hunting, I would recommend you get something in the 500 to 1,000 lumen range. 1,000 lumens would be better, but it gets a little more expensive. Personally, I don't think you need to go much over 1,000 lumens, just in my experience with this, but find something that works for you. And I would recommend, if you have the cash, to spend a little money on it. The next item on the list is a navigation system. This will help you go where you want to go and return safely. The basic navigation system is, of course, a map and a compass. But in the modern day, we don't use these as much as we might use GPS locators or our phones, right? What I use the most is a GPS mapping app called Onyx Hunt. It gives you aerial and topographical maps that you can download on your phone, and it's super easy to use. So I rely on that the most out of any navigation system. If you want to learn more about using mapping apps for hunting, check out episode 4. I do a deep dive there. In addition to my mapping apps on my phone, I may bring a physical backup map because it can't run out of batteries. And whether I bring a map or not, I always bring my compass. Before I go out, I'll take a look at the maps of the area and try to find features that have people. So maybe there is a long highway to the south of me or a city to the north of me. I know that if I get super lost, I can pull out my compass and follow that all the way to that highway or all the way to that city and meet up with people and go from there. It's not a foolproof system, but I think it's a good backup. You can also use your GPS navigator. There's different handheld units. And one thing that I would include in a navigation system is some sort of locator beacon. If you're going out solo in places that don't have cell service and there's not a lot of other people around, you might consider getting a locator beacon, which will allow you to hit a panic button, essentially, if you get in a bad situation, and it will send a message to someone you know, or it will send a message to emergency personnel and they can come find you out in the wilderness. And that can save your life. It really is something to consider. It will cost you some money, but when you think about the cost benefit analysis, it might be worth it for you. The next essential on the list is a knife. I probably don't need to explain this one a whole lot. Hunters use knives all the time, and it's just a great utility tool for cutting, breaking down an animal, starting fires, all sorts of things, right? Most hunters wouldn't be caught dead without their knife. Now, this item could also be a multi-tool instead of just a hunting knife, and some people like to make this a category and call it tools and repair kit. So if you're going on a trip and you think it may be helpful to have tools or some sort of small sewing kit, that's something you might consider here as well. Another thing you should consider bringing on any hunt are fire starters. It might not be apparent if you're just going out for the day, but think about if you had to stay longer than you expect. Maybe you have to stay overnight. In that situation, having fire starters would be helpful for warmth, making a fire, right? Maybe if you have to stay a lot longer, it'd be helpful for purifying water in your water bottle. And even say you get really lost, fires can be helpful for signaling to rescuers where you're at. Fire starters don't have to be complicated. I like to carry a lighter or some waterproof matches or both. Then you also should consider a fire starting substance like lint from your dryer or a candle, or you can buy different commercial little blocks or pastes that are great for catching a flame. One thing to consider also is, are you going to a place that has firewood available? While I was researching this, I saw this note on the REI website and I thought it was a very good consideration. Are you going somewhere above the tree line or in snow where there's not going to be a lot of firewood available? If so, it may be better to just bring a stove to use in the case of an emergency. The next item on the list is sun protection. Sun protection is something that I didn't take that seriously as a kid because usually I didn't burn that bad, and as a kid I would heal up quickly and it just didn't seem to be a big deal. Well, last spring I was on a bear hunt and I neglected to bring sunscreen and I got all burned on my arms and the back of my neck. And what I noticed is that it made me very tired. So for anybody who's trying to get the best physical performance on their hunts, you should consider sun protection so that you're not getting dehydrated and tired on your hunt. You might think, hey, I can deal with a little bit of a tan, whatever. But keep that in mind that the more sunburned you get, the more dehydrated and tired you'll get. Sun exposure can also burn your eyes. If you hear about people mountaineering getting snow blindness, that's when their eyes are getting sunburned, something in their eyes getting sunburned. And of course, there's always the danger of heat exhaustion or heat stroke. Sun protection is going to look different based on your trip. It may just mean a hat with a brim. It may mean a hat and sunscreen. If you're above the tree line or in lots of snow, you might want sunglasses to protect your eyes, especially in snow, right? Where the sun can reflect off the snow up into your eyes. And then your sun protection may also just include a long sleeve shirt or even a small tarp that you can set up in the middle of the day. Like I said, it's going to be different for every trip, depending on your environment. But take it seriously. Don't discount the advantage of a small tube of sunscreen. It can really make a big difference on your hunt. Here's something that I haven't considered a whole lot, and that's emergency shelter. Emergency shelter is just something to keep you dry, mitigate the effects of the wind, and contain some heat. But here's the catch. It needs to be something that you carry at all times. So if I'm backpack hunting and I go set up my camp and leave my tent in camp, and then I walk off a mile to glass from a knob somewhere, well, now I don't have that emergency shelter with me. And what if I break my leg in some deadfall or something like that? I'm going to be in big trouble. So this has been something interesting for me to think about, and I think it's something that I'll add to my kit. Your emergency shelter could be as simple as a lightweight bivy sack or an ultralight tarp. There's even single-use bivy sacks that are kind of like an emergency blanket, but actually in the shape of a sleeping bag. In a pinch, heavy-duty trash bags might suffice, but they're going to be tricky to configure, and they're not going to do much to help you contain heat. So I think the best way to go would be some sort of bivy sack. If you already camp with a bivy sack, just keep that in your pack instead of leaving it somewhere. And if you don't camp with a bivy sack, maybe consider getting one of those emergency bivvies. Okay, so now we're moving into the extra categories: extra clothing, extra water, and extra food. When I was a kid in Boy Scouts, this always confused me a little bit because when I was thinking about extra clothing, I was imagining that I needed to pack a double of every single thing that I was bringing. So I was thinking, okay, I have my mid layer. I need to bring an extra mid layer in case the one that I'm wearing gets wet or something like that. And being a small kid with a 40-liter backpack at the time, I'm trying to figure out how I even fit this all in my backpack, and it just wasn't practical. A better way to think about extra clothing, extra water, and extra food is to define it as beyond the minimum expectation. If you're going on a day hunt, you might feel good in just your pants and your shirt, but what if you have to stay immobile for a long time? Or what if you had to stay longer than you think and you needed to stay through the night? What layers and what clothing are you going to need to do that and survive? For extra clothing, that might mean rain gear. You could be setting out on a hunt and you don't really think you're going to need your rain gear, but you know how fickle the mountains are, right? And you could get a squall. Pack that rain gear as some extra clothing beyond the minimum expectation of what you're going to need. Your extra clothing might also mean an extra insulating layer, something like a down jacket, something you can throw in your pack, and maybe you won't access it, but if you have to spend the night for some reason, you're really going to appreciate having that extra layer, and it could save your life. Extra water is a similar thing. It's not that you need to bring twice the amount of water that you think you'll need. It's just that you should bring a little bit more in case you have to stay out longer than you expected, or you should bring a way to get more clean water. If I'm in an area that has lots of flowing water, I'll often bring my water bottle with about as much water as I need, and then some potable aqua tabs, which are these little iodine tablets that you can put in water to purify it. And that way I know if I run out of water in my water bottle, I can go down to a stream and get some more water. If I'm in a place where there isn't a lot of water running, I'm still going to bring those water purification tabs or a filter or a SteriPen or something like that. But I'm also going to increase my water carrying capacity. And you might even consider bringing a water bottle that you throw in your pack and forget about and never use unless you're truly in an emergency. And that way you'll have some water to drink while you work on getting yourself out of the situation. You're going to have to adapt this to whatever environment you're hunting in, right? A fall hunt in the Pacific Northwest is going to be completely different than a late August hunt in Nevada, right? So think about what your water needs are and don't skimp on water because you truly need water to survive. The last essential on the list is extra food. There's no hard rule on this, but you're going to want a little bit more than you think you'll need so that if you have to stay out for longer than you expect, you can eat it and have the energy and focus you need to get out of a bad situation. Some people suggest that for longer trips, you pack at least an extra day's worth of food. And I think that's a good guideline, but it's really up to you. It doesn't need to be a lot of food, but a couple bars or high-calorie snacks like summer sausage or something like that could do a lot to help you stay focused and make good decisions in an emergency scenario. So those are the 10 essentials. If you have everything on this list and you know how to use it, you'll be well prepared for almost anything that comes your way. Now, one question you might ask is, when would you pack all the 10 essentials and when would you leave some at home? Like I've said before, you can adapt this list to the specific needs of your hunt or trip. If you're hiking a short, well-used trail on the weekend, there's not as much risk as if you're backpacking in 7 miles on a solo bear hunt, right? So you'll have to use your judgment and make your own decisions. To help you out though, here's an example of what I might bring on a day hunt. So first I would have my first aid kit, but I would adjust the amount of supplies for the duration of my trip. If I'm only going on a day hunt, I don't need 1,000 Band-Aids. I just need a couple. Then I'd have my headlamp and one set of extra batteries. I would be using Onyx Hunt on my phone for navigation, but I'd also bring my compass. And if it's an area that I'm not that familiar with, I would also bring a backup map. I would have my hunting knife, so all good there. I'd also bring a lighter and some lint from my dryer, super light, packs down small, doesn't take up much space. I'd likely wear a hat with a brim for the versatility and for the sun protection. And if it's sunny and warm out, I'm going to bring a small tube of sunscreen. For emergency shelter, again, this is one that I don't always carry because I kind of think I'd be good in my rain gear in a pinch, but I'm starting to think about bringing a single-use bivy sack, something that just gives me a little bit extra warmth and protection if I need it. For extra clothing, I would bring an extra insulating layer like my down jacket and likely bring my rain gear as well. Then I'll have my water bottle with some water purification tabs, a couple of extra bars of food, and that's it. I know that sounds like a lot, but besides your extra clothing, all that could just about fit in a Ziploc bag. It doesn't take up that much space. Now, if I was headed out for a longer trip, I'd beef up my first aid kit. I'd make sure I have all the physical maps I needed. I would bring more batteries for my headlamp. I might bring a whole extra day's worth of food, etc. But even for a shorter trip, a small Ziploc-sized bag that you throw in your pack for a day hunt could potentially make the difference between you getting out of the woods or you staying there for a very long time. So that's all I've got for today. I hope this has been helpful for you. If there's something you bring on your hunting trips every time, something you consider essential, I'd love to know about it. Just shoot me an email at persistenceoutdoors2022@gmail.com. Make sure to spell persistence right, and maybe I'll add it to my pack. Other than that, get outside, embrace the winter, and I'll catch you next week.